If this episode makes you think, please let us know in the comments and support us by subscribing and leaving a review. Thank you. Today we are exploring AI in literature education through the importance of teaching students what AI can't do, published by The Conversation. In one classroom exercise, ChatGPT turned a bus into a train, then placed spoken dialogue into the mouth of a character whose silence is central to the novel. Those errors tell us something useful, although perhaps not quite everything the article claims they do. The piece describes a Southern Gothic literature course built around Carson McCullers' as a 1940 novel, The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Students asked ChatGPT to analyze the emotional atmosphere of particular scenes. They then prompted it to create a new scene involving at least 3 characters. I found the design of this exercise fascinating because the teacher didn't hide AI from students or simply warn them that it was unreliable. Students were allowed to encounter its limitations directly. That's a much stronger form of AI literacy. You're not telling students what to think about the machine, you're giving them enough knowledge of the text to judge what the machine produces. In the scene at the center of the article, Spiros Antonopoulos is sent to a state asylum, leaving his friend John Singer behind. According to the piece, ChatGPT described loneliness, helplessness, and irreversible separation. That sounds plausible. It also sounds generic. The response missed Singer's fear about what might happen to Antonopoulos, the social context surrounding his removal, and the dramatic irony of Antonopoulos seeming unaware of the upheaval. It also claimed that a train departed when the vehicle was actually a bus. That small mistake matters. A student who hasn't read the book might accept the confident description because it has the shape of literary analysis. It uses emotionally appropriate language and mentions symbolism, yet it isn't anchored securely in the scene. This is one of the clearest AI limitations in humanities subjects. Linguistic fluency can create the appearance of understanding before understanding has been demonstrated. Southern Gothic AI analysis is an especially demanding test. Writers such as Carson McCullers and Flannery O'Connor create worlds shaped by isolation, violence, faith, unbelief, and what O'Connor called the grotesque, meaning often sits in contradiction. A character can be ridiculous and tragic, cruel and wounded, spiritually hungry and unable to name that hunger. ChatGPT is very good at finding familiar patterns in language. Literature asks us to stay with what doesn't fit the pattern. The article links this weakness to AI's lack of a body and lived experience. I agree with part of that argument. ChatGPT hasn't felt dread, abandonment, or embarrassment. It doesn't fear for a friend. It predicts language based on patterns in data. But we should be careful about moving from one shallow response to a universal claim about what AI can never produce. We aren't given the exact prompts, the model version, the full conversation, or a broader sample of responses. A better prompt might have produced a more precise analysis. It still wouldn't have felt the emotion, but it might have described it more convincingly. That distinction is worth teaching. Producing language associated with empathy isn't the same as experiencing empathy. Yet literature students judge interpretation through textual evidence, coherence, and insight, not by proving that the critic personally experienced the character's pain. So the strongest classroom critique isn't simply, the machine has no feelings. It's, show me where this interpretation accounts for the details, tensions, and silences of this particular text. If you value grounded discussion like this about AI in education, follow the podcast for more episodes. The creative writing task exposed another problem. ChatGPT reportedly gave John Singer spoken contributions, even though his communication and silence are fundamental to the story. We need some precision here, because deafness alone doesn't mean a person cannot speak. That assumption would itself flatten lived experience. The relevant issue is how McCullers specifically constructs Singer as a character and how his established way of communicating shapes the novel. The machine failed to respect that textual constraint. This is where teaching AI literary analysis becomes genuinely interesting. Consider a Year 10 class studying the scene. Rather than asking students whether the AI answer is good or bad, ask them to annotate it in 3 colours: claims supported by the text, claims that need stronger evidence, and details the response has ignored. Then require each student to rewrite 1 paragraph using a quotation and an interpretive choice they can defend aloud. That preserves productive struggle. ChatGPT performs the initial drafting, but the student still has to notice, test, challenge, and transform. The real value is not in what the machine produces, but in how the student responds. The same principle could reshape assessment. A finished essay alone tells us less than it once did. I'd want to see the product, the process, and a live performance of understanding. The student might submit the final analysis, a record of how they challenged ChatGPT, and then explain why the bus matters more than the invented train. That final conversation doesn't need to become an interrogation. 2 thoughtful minutes may reveal whether the student understands the emotional and social weight of the scene. For a department head planning professional development, this article suggests a better activity than another tour of tool features. Give teachers a familiar passage alongside an AI-generated interpretation. Ask where the response becomes generic, what evidence it overlooks, and how the task could create cognitive stretch. That's a practical, critical thinking AI activity, because teachers begin from disciplinary expertise rather than technical confidence. School leaders should notice the implementation challenge. If teachers are expected to build activities like this, they need protected time to compare examples and agree what responsible use looks like. Buying access to ChatGPT is easy. Developing shared professional judgment is slower. Governments can make the same mistake at scale by counting licenses, training sessions, or logins as evidence of progress. Those figures say very little about whether students are thinking more carefully. The article is illustrated with Emile Bernard's 1888 painting Madeleine in the Bois d'Amour. That image is a useful reminder that art holds interiority without fully explaining it. The point isn't that human interpretation is always profound, and machine interpretation is always empty. Students produce vague platitudes too. The educational opportunity lies in comparison. What does each reading notice, miss, or assume? My view is that AI in literature education should make close reading more necessary, not less. We shouldn't ask students to outwrite ChatGPT through speed or polish. We should teach them to outthink it through attention, judgment, and a willingness to remain with ambiguity. Machines can imitate interpretation. Education must cultivate the person capable of judging it. That's all for today. Thanks for listening.